For 37 minutes, President Muhammadu Buhari was addressing the nation on the 61st independence anniversary, and it touched on so many things that is going to form debate amongst Nigerians in the next few days. A lot of people will say, of course, he touched areas that I wanted. Others are going to say, well, I was expecting him to touch here and there. But however, that is how it goes. 37 minutes address from President Muhammadu Buhari. Really, so many things to talk about there. Now, I have with me in the studio Gbola, who has been one of our analysts in here, as well as Ibrahim Great is here, and also joining us from London in UK is Olanrewaju Sharafa, who we have started discussions with earlier on. All right, Ibrahim Great, let me start with you on this one. Earlier, before the speech, I was asking, what are we expecting, or what are you expecting? You used the word empathy, and Olanrewaju used hope, the issue of hope. So, did you feel that from the president?
I would not particularly say empathy, but I would put it this way, that in terms of tonality, I will grade this speech about 6.5.
6.5?
It's 6.5, you know.
6.5%?
That's about 65% of 100.
Oh, okay.
The tonality was calm, but, and you know, first of all, let me say it's important for us to give glory to God, because a large amount of Nigerians believe so much in God. And I want to believe that is the reason why we're still alive and some of us are still breathing in this country. So the president starting with that was a good point, and I don't expect anything less than that. However, saying that, overall, I would expect the speech to be, every speech has to always have a central theme. And the major thing in the country at the moment is insecurity. I felt that this speech has brushed over the issue of insecurity. Now, the biggest issue in Nigeria right now is not COVID-19, it's not the pandemic. Even the nations that are hit the most, in Europe, I've been to Europe, almost throughout Europe, most of the masks are off. People are living, you know, going into the store without this thing. We're still using masks in Nigeria. I don't seem to understand why. But the major issue of the Nigerian country is insecurity. A lot of time of the 37 minutes needed to have been spent on that. However, I expected the president to touch on Twitter ban, and I would say that was a home run for me, because the president addressing that, although the speech, the way it's been crafted, there's a bit of ambiguity around, is the Twitter really lifted, or is lifted with condition, or it's not lifted.
He said
yet.
He has ordered it to be lifted on the conditions. Now, he gave conditions, and some of the issues he talked about there, they've been deliberating on, is on issue of national security, physical presence, fair taxation, local content, and things like that.
Those are fair points. But I'd like to say this. If I was writing the president's speech, I'll put that as the last or the penultimate statement. Because 70% of Nigerians are youth. And you will ask, how long will people connect to this speech? How long? Many people would have been switched off. Some people in the studio would even have switched off that this is going. What is in it for me? At the moment that I went on Twitter, as we're in the studio, the moment the president said, people have already been tweeting. There was silence about the presidential speech until he reached Twitter. So I will expect him to actually use that as an opportunity to connect with the youth. Before I leave you, I'll say, the speech lacks connectivity. I don't understand why at this age and time, our president still have to be sitting down to read a speech. There is opportunity to use a teleprompter and stand up, you know, and connect with the people.
Well, Gbola earlier, when he was talking, said that with the presidential system of government we run, the president is like a god. And you know, in the African context, when you have the God factor, somehow he sits down and everybody, you know, shows some level of allegiance and all of that. So maybe those are just little symbolisms here and there. But it's all right. We understand you. Let me bring Olanrewaju in here. Olanrewaju, you talked about the issue of hope earlier on. Did the presidential speech or address, did he give you hope?
Thank you, Mike. I suppose this speech was not targeted to give hope to Nigeria, but I think what he was expected of, or what the president intended to achieve with this speech, was to, emphasize more on the peacefulness of Nigeria, the need for unity, issues around, governance of vaccine, issues around security and all of that. But I think it would have been more ideal for the president to come out to assure the youth that tomorrow will be better, give some sectoral recognition to the entertainment industry, where we have the youth who are thriving with their talent, touch more on, good things and positive things that are going to kind of give us that assurance that we're going to see a nation that will prosper, rather than touching on issues around agitators, Sunday Gbola specifically, mentioning Kano, because these are issues that are, of course, not forgotten, but people are not necessarily looking at that at the moment. So I suppose while the president, missed this opportunity to assure the youth about the future, we also did not get empathy in this speech, and it's so painful that the president missed that connectivity of citizens.
Okay, well, Balaba, you listened to the president's address, and he touched on so many things, several areas he talked about, from security to petroleum to digital to transportation to youth to girl child education to vaccines to media and so on. And did it connect with you somehow?
Let me start by saying that my colleague in the studio said something that I think I must speak to, and that is the fact that he has recently visited Europe and that people are no longer using face mask. We must be very careful, very, very careful. Non-pharmaceutical measures, such as using face mask, are still very, very, very important. Reason is that the virus is still there and people are still dying. And the unfortunate part of it regarding the virus is the fact that variants are emerging. And the most effective way, and we should not get into the madness that has started in America regarding, wanting to tie ideological fanaticism to simple medical issues. It's been tested over the history of humanity. 100 years ago, we saw pictures of people. So face masks are still important. Let's pack that aside. For me, it was another Bouteflika moment. I wouldn't know if you know what I mean by Bouteflika. There was a president that just passed, God bless his soul, an ex-president of Algeria. For so many years, there would be rumors that it was, and they would wheel him out. For me, it was an ultimate Bouteflika moment. Again, and the lullabic effect. You know what I mean by lullaby. I was almost sleeping. And maybe because I woke up too early, you guys made me wake up around 4 a.m. So the lullabic effect was very, and I was training. But I wrote so many things down from a speech. And as time goes on, but you see, like my colleague in England stated, he needed not to have mentioned Nnamdi Kanu and Sunday Gbola. Look at even the pronunciation of Sunday Gbola, president of Nigeria. Somebody could have schooled him on how to pronounce the name of him, but leave that aside. In the backdrop of the fact that the government of United Arab Emirates listed names of Nigerians that the Nigerian government has refused to mention and arrest them. So we have a case of a government of a sovereign nation identifying Nigerian sponsors of terrorism, and which the Nigerian government deliberately refrained from acknowledging by arresting these characters. But our president, when he was addressing us, was mentioning somebody in the National Assembly that was supposedly sponsoring either of these two characters, Sunday Gbola or Nnamdi Kanu. And that tells you...
From reports, we hear that the reports credited to the presidency said they're not interested in naming and shaming, but prosecution.
My brother, it would have been lovely if those characters had been arrested and are presently now being taken through our criminal justice system. It would have been lovely to have had that as the background for our president to speak to the fact that there is a character in our National Assembly sponsoring this division. And this was just when he said Nigeria is for all of us. What gives me now the impression that a president that is speaking so sclerotically, one, on the one hand, condemning rightfully so, condemning terrorism, condemning the agitations of some people to break up this country, and yet we could see that the big elephant in the China shop is the fact that people who have been identified in another jurisdiction, names, they are yet to be arrested, yet to be prosecuted, and we could see that slant. You know, it was a very rich speech in many respects too, regarding some of the ideas tucked into it. His lack of, I said lullabic, I said Bouteflika moment. But to be very honest with you, nobody can deny the fact that there are some fantastic ideas in the speech. He spoke on the PIA. Petroleum Industry Act, and the fact that the Nigerian state is gradually tilting in the direction of recognizing the fact that when economic activities are done in a particular locale, the aborigines of that locale and the residents of that locale could be negatively affected, and there must be a form of recompense. He was a bit generous to the 9th Assembly. Why would he not be generous to the 9th Assembly? This is the ultimate legislative subservience or docility we have ever seen in the history, not only in the political history of Nigeria, but in the history of a presidential system of government that has ever known, across the world. He spoke on modular refineries. It became very interesting to me. And he mentioned the fact that, in Imo, he would soon commission a modular refinery. Though he will soon commission a modular refinery. There are developments in Lagos regarding a modular refinery. Akwa Ibom, will soon modular. Fantastic. He spoke on gasification project. And when it got to the gasification project, I really want to, because I was in Abuja a couple of days ago, and I was fortunate to be called impromptu to address a session held by the National Automotive Design and Development Council, an awareness program. You see, gasification is wonderful if we could hold the artisanal community to look. The world is decarbonizing. We're moving from fossil fuel, the pollutants, the great pollutants. We are moving from fossil fuel, the great pollutants. The world is now transiting to a carbon neutral economy. Before getting to the ultimate carbon neutral economy, and I'm talking as a director of a prominent automotive mechatronics, this in Nigeria, and a facilitator of human capital development in that industry. You know what? We have enormous opportunities in the gasification effort before we get to electric vehicles. Nigeria has enormous opportunities because we are naturally a gas nation, even far beyond. And we will speak to this as time goes on.
We'll come back to that because he was talking about the issue of end power and so on, raising the number of those who are benefiting from 500,000 to 1 million.
He said he has actually instructed that be raised from 500,000 to 1 million, which is fantastic.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that vis-a-vis the issue of creating job and partnering with agencies and corporations and enterprises that are into that sector. Now, Abraham, let's talk about the issue of, because three of you have issues with the way the speech connects. Mm-hmm. Now, you are a leadership consultant and communication person. When it comes to, because of course, the president was not just the one who decided to take his pen and write all of these things out. Of course, there would have been a team putting this together and ensure that they craft a message. When it comes to communicating with Nigerians and the way that will hook them somehow to what the issues are and what their hopes are, what do you think is the missing link there?
I think the greatest of the missing link is assumptions. And I always say that assumption is the lowest level of knowledge. You know, we are yet as a nation too much of dictatorship in this country. And one of the things that needed to have
from
happened,
our military experience.
Well, we need to tear away from that because the military have now been gone for, I think, 21 years, if I remember. But what we need to do when we're giving or writing speech like this is that we need to connect first with the people in research. Use platforms like Twitter or Monkey Survey, have a feel of the people, then a bit of qualitative survey, send people out. Go and ask people what you expect the president to say. What are you expect on the first of, what are you expecting the federal government to connect with you? Physical written question. Then people will tell you, oh, I expect the president to do this. I expect, then you do an analysis, you code that into groups. This is, 60% of the people are saying this. If I was writing the president's speech, that's how I would start. You know, giving glory to God, connecting with the people. You know, 33% of Nigerians say they are happy about the situation. You know, 14% of Nigerians are in. About 71% of the country think the country is insecure. Here are the measures that we're taking. Sometimes we just see that and we're basing writing of presidential speech only on intelligence. You cannot connect with people without data. You see, once you get to a certain place in life and in position, you disconnect with people, not willingly, but you really can't feel the pulse of the people any longer. And that is why research and development. I'll give you an example. The president was talking about a pharmaceutical independence. And I don't see how that is happening because with the last I checked on the Nigerian budget, there is very little effort to really improve research and development in this country. And without research and development, how do we become the giant of Africa? How do we develop? At this point, we're still importing vaccine from abroad. But we are intellectuals. We have Nigerian doctors.
But isn't that what he's saying, that we're looking for our own measures now to see how we can develop research locally and become independent?
It's one thing to write speech and say those things. It's another thing for us to actually take pragmatic steps to make those things happen. And you feel those in the national budget. You feel that in the way the president addressed the nation. I wouldn't need a 37-minute speech from the president if the president can focus on the core thing like insecurity and the health of the people.
All right. Olanrewaju, just in 2 minutes before we go to top of the hour, what is your take home from the president's speech for you? What makes it for you?
Mike, thank you so much for coming back to me, and I love the fact that you questioned the methodology of how the president's speech emerged, and I think you're very correct. The president's speech today has exposed our nation that we have we have weak institutions. We have problem with regards to our institution. This is just an evidence that we have a very weak institution. The presidential speech is not coming from an institutional perspective. One of the strong corporate governance theory or theories in governance is institutional theory. I'm very sure that some of the ministers of the president will be highly disappointed in how the president have actually give account of, his stewardship today. Because, of course, many of those speech sometimes even lacks flow, lacks logic. At some point, the president was talking about the civil service competencies, and he immediately moved to girls' education. I don't see connection. I don't see flow in that order. I think in future, speeches like this should come out institutionally, where you have president giving account of various institutions, what is happening in various institutions, what hope are we expecting, what does the future looks like. Unfortunately, also, the president touched on the need for civil service to come into politics. I think this is just a 2023 political permutation. And I suppose this is something that we're not expecting in any way. This is a time our nation is building, and the president should give us hope, empathy, and assurance. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Olanrewaju Sharafa, for your insight and all your contribution.